She was more than just a name on a roster. Tamarie Tollison was a force of nature in the high-stakes world of marine mammal training. At SeaWorld San Diego, where the line between entertainment and animal welfare often blurred, she shone like a beacon of dedication, skill, and genuine connection to the throngs of tourists who flocked to witness the majesty of killer whales. She was the smiling face in a wetsuit, orchestrating breathtaking displays of athleticism and intelligence. But behind the orchestrated splashes and perfectly timed breaches lay a young woman deeply committed to the well-being of the creatures she worked with. Tamarie wasn't born into the spotlight. Her journey began with a deep-seated love for animals, a fascination with the ocean, and an unwavering work ethic. It was a passion that propelled her through the ranks, transforming her from an eager intern to a senior orca trainer, a position of immense responsibility and prestige within the SeaWorld hierarchy. This wasn't merely a job for Tamarie, it was a calling, and at the heart of that calling were Orchid and Splash, two orcas who occupied a particularly special place in her life. Orchid, a female born under SeaWorld's care, was a creature of remarkable intelligence, a keen observer of her environment, and a quick study when it came to mastering new behaviors. But beneath her outward docility lay a powerful, independent spirit, a complex personality that demanded respect and understanding. Splash, on the other hand, was a different beast entirely. This towering male, transferred from SeaWorld, Texas, possessed raw power that was both awe-inspiring and unnerving. He was a force of nature contained within the concrete walls of Shamu Stadium, a creature with a history of unpredictable behavior and a penchant for pushing boundaries. Some trainers approached Splash with caution, hesitant to fully trust his volatile temperament. But Tamarie, with her characteristic blend of confidence and empathy, saw beyond the surface. She recognized the intelligence beneath the aggression, the potential for connection buried beneath layers of frustration and confinement. Tamarie dedicated countless hours to building a rapport with Orchid and Splash, learning their individual quirks, anticipating their moods, and communicating with them in a language that transcended mere commands and rewards. These were not simply performing animals to her. They were individuals with their own unique needs and desires. She celebrated their successes, comforted them during times of stress, and advocated for their well-being within the often restrictive environment of SeaWorld. She knew their every scar, every vocalization, every subtle shift in body language. She could tell when they were hungry, playful, or simply in need of some extra attention. She fostered a bond of trust and mutual respect, a partnership built on understanding and empathy. The hours she spent in and out of the water forged a deep connection that many believed was unbreakable. But even as Tamarie nurtured these relationships, she remained acutely aware of the inherent dangers lurking beneath the surface. The reality was inescapable. These were apex predators, incredibly powerful animals capable of inflicting serious harm, even unintentionally. Behind the smiles, the cheers, and the seemingly effortless performances lurked the understanding that control was an illusion. These were wild animals operating on instinct, subject to sudden shifts in mood and behavior. SeaWorld, for all its attempts to create a safe and predictable environment, was still a place where the unexpected could happen. A place where a split-second decision, a misinterpreted signal, or a moment of misjudgment could have devastating consequences. The trainers lived with this knowledge every single day, carrying the weight of responsibility for both their own safety and the well-being of the animals in their care. Tamarie was no exception. She understood the risks involved. She had seen firsthand the power and unpredictability of orcas. But she also believed in the power of connection, in the possibility of building a harmonious relationship between humans and these magnificent creatures. She dedicated her life to bridging the gap between the wild and the world of marine entertainment. She felt the weight of the risk, the ever-present danger that accompanied every interaction with these massive animals. Yet, she also believed in the trust that she had worked so hard to cultivate, the bond that she had forged through countless hours of dedication and empathy. She thought this was a two-way street, a mutual respect. It was a delicate balancing act, a constant negotiation between respect for the animal's wild nature and the demands of the performance. And it was a tightrope walk that Tamarie Tollison navigated with skill, grace, and unwavering dedication, until the day that balance was irrevocably shattered, and the world watched as that trust went from an unspoken bond to an irreparable fate. The sun's rays barely kissed the horizon, painting the sky in soft hues of pink and orange as Tamarie Tollison arrived at SeaWorld San Diego on that fateful July morning. It was a Monday, the start of a new week, filled with the promise of connection and performance. She loved this time before the park buzzed with tourists. It was a moment of quiet, a sacred ritual between her and the orcas. But even in the pre-dawn calm, a subtle unease lingered in the air. Not the kind that screamed danger, but a whisper of discord, a minor key in what was usually a harmonious melody. As Tamarie walked toward the orca enclosure, she noticed the early morning marine layer was thicker than usual, clinging to the air like a damp shroud. The sounds of the park, typically a comforting hum of filtration systems and distant seabird calls, seemed muffled, muted. Tamarie, ever the observant trainer, couldn't shake the feeling that something was slightly off. The whales, too, seemed restless. Orchid, usually the first to greet her with an eager eye and playful splash, was unusually still. She glided through the water with a deliberate, almost mechanical grace, her massive frame casting long shadows across the pool's surface, and Splash, known for his boisterous energy and playful nips, remained submerged, a dark, silent presence lurking beneath the waves. The routine began as it always did. Tamarie approached the edge of the pool, clipboard in hand, ready to begin the morning's training session. This wasn't just about tricks and performances. It was about maintaining the bond, reinforcing trust, and ensuring the whales were mentally stimulated. Today's session focused on simple obedience, commands, and tactile reinforcement, gentle rubs and scratches that served as rewards and affirmations. She began with Orchid, hand signals crisp and clear. She directed the orca through a series of familiar maneuvers. But Orchid's responses were sluggish, almost reluctant. Her focus seemed to drift, her eyes darting around the pool as if searching for something unseen. Tamarie noticed a subtle tremor in Orchid's pectoral fins, a barely perceptible twitch that hinted at underlying tension. She made a mental note to adjust the training schedule, to ease up on the demands, to prioritize comfort over performance. Next, it was Splash's turn. As the massive male surfaced, Tamarie couldn't help but feel a prickle of apprehension. Splash's energy was often unpredictable, a volatile mix of playfulness and aggression. But today, there was something different in his eyes, a cold, distant glint that sent a shiver down her spine. He approached her slowly, deliberately, his immense body filling the space between them. Tamarie extended her hand, offering a gentle touch, but Splash recoiled, pulling back as if burned. A low, guttural rumble vibrated from his chest, a sound Tamarie had rarely heard before. It wasn't playful. It was a warning. Ignoring her rising anxiety, Tamarie attempted to regain control of the situation. She repeated the hand signals, her voice firm and reassuring. But Splash remained unresponsive, his gaze locked on her, unblinking, predatory. The air crackled with tension, a silent electricity that foretold an impending storm. And then it happened. In a fraction of a second, the tranquil morning shattered. The bond of trust, years in the making, evaporated. There was no warning lunge, no telltale splash, just a sudden, brutal surge of power. Splash erupted from the water with astonishing speed, his massive jaws clamping down on Tamarie's left arm. The force was immense, bone-crushing. Pain exploded through her body, a searing, agonizing fire that ripped through her muscles and tendons. Before she could even register what was happening, Orchid joined the attack. The two orcas, working in tandem, seized her, pulling her into the depths of the pool. The cold water enveloped her, silencing her screams, stealing her breath. The world turned upside down. Disoriented and in unimaginable pain, Tamarie struggled against the crushing grip of the whales. They tossed her back and forth like a rat doll, their powerful bodies propelling her through the water with terrifying force. She felt the sharp sting of their teeth tearing at her flesh, the pressure of their jaws crushing her bones. Panic surged through her, a primal fear that threatened to overwhelm her. She fought with every ounce of strength she possessed, kicking, clawing, desperate to break free. But the orcas were too strong, too powerful. They were apex predators, built for the kill. And in that moment, Tamarie was nothing more than prey. Her wetsuit offered little protection against their relentless assault. The water around her turned, red, stained with her blood, a horrifying testament to the brutality of the attack. The pool, once a sanctuary of connection and trust, had become a watery prison, a scene of unimaginable horror. And as Tamarie Tollison fought for her life against the relentless onslaught of the orcas, she knew, with a chilling certainty, that this was a battle she might not win. The routine had transformed into a nightmare. Tamarie Tollison fought, not just against two apex predators in the cold, dark water of Shamu Stadium, but against the crushing weight of the water itself, against the shock that threatened to shut down her system, against the primal instinct to panic. She fought with the years of training that had conditioned her body, with the sheer force of will that defined her character, and perhaps most importantly, with the unwavering hope that she could make it back to the surface. But hope is a fragile thing when you're being dragged in opposite directions by thousands of pounds of muscle and bone. And as she fought, the reality of her situation became terrifyingly clear. She was utterly, completely at the mercy of these animals. The bond she had so carefully cultivated, the trust she had placed in them, meant nothing in the face of their raw power. When Orchid finally released her foot, it was more than just a physical release. It was a release of tension in the pool, allowing her enough of a chance to rise back up towards the surface. She tasted air, sweet, precious air, before being dragged down again, just one brief breath to fuel her body to keep on fighting and moving. The rescue attempt was a chaotic ballet of desperation. Trainers scrambled around the pool's edge, shouting commands that were lost in the echoing expanse of the stadium. The emergency recall system blared, a piercing sound designed to penetrate the deepest parts of the whales' minds, but it was met with stubborn silence. The whales weren't listening. Or perhaps they simply didn't care. The false recall signal that triggered Kasatka's response was a last-ditch gamble, a desperate Hail Mary pass in a game where the stakes were life and death. And miraculously, it worked. But even as Orchid and Splash retreated, the nightmare wasn't over. Tamarie was still in the water, critically injured, her body battered and broken. The scene on the pool deck was one of stark contrast. The sterile white of the concrete was stained crimson, a stark reminder of the violence that had just unfolded. The air, once filled with the cheerful music of the park, now crackled with fear and disbelief. The trainers, usually so composed and professional, were now openly weeping, their faces etched with horror. And then came SeaWorld's response. Even as Tamarie was being rushed to the hospital, the gears of corporate damage control were already grinding into motion. The narrative had to be controlled, the truth sanitized, the blame deflected. The word attack was banished, replaced with the euphemism trainer incident. The focus shifted from the whale's behavior to Tamarie's supposed mistake, a subtle but insidious way to shift the responsibility away from the company. Press releases were drafted, carefully worded to minimize the severity of the incident and reassure the public that everything was under control. Internal memos were circulated, reminding employees to stick to the official story and avoid speaking to the media. The message was clear: protect the brand, protect the bottom line, no matter the cost. But the truth, like water, has a way of finding its cracks. Despite SeaWorld's best efforts, the story of what happened to Tamarie Tollison began to leak out. Whispers spread among the trainers, fueled by their guilt and trauma. Some spoke to journalists on condition of anonymity, risking their jobs to expose the truth. Others simply couldn't bear the burden of silence any longer and resigned, walking away from the world they had once loved. The lasting impact of the attack on Tamarie Tollison was profound and far-reaching. For Tamarie herself, the physical scars were just the beginning. The emotional trauma was deep and lasting, leaving her with nightmares, anxiety, and a profound sense of betrayal. She never returned to SeaWorld, choosing instead to retreat from the public eye and focus on her recovery. For the other trainers, the attack shattered the illusion of safety and control that had long been maintained within the parks. They were forced to confront the reality that these animals, no matter how well trained or seemingly docile, were still wild creatures with the capacity for immense violence. The attack cast a long shadow over their work, fueling their fears and doubts. The events of that day also exposed the dark underbelly of the marine park industry, revealing the lengths to which companies were willing to go to protect their image and profits. The attempt to silence the truth about Tamarie's attack sparked outrage and condemnation, fueling the growing movement to end the captivity of orcas. But perhaps the most significant lasting impact of the attack was the light it shed on the ethical questions surrounding the keeping of these intelligent and complex creatures in captivity. Tamarie Tollison's story became a symbol of the inherent dangers of forcing wild animals to perform for human entertainment, a stark reminder of the price that both humans and animals pay for the sake of spectacle. It prompted a global conversation about the welfare of orcas in captivity and the need to respect their inherent dignity and freedom. The attack on Tamarie Tollison was more than just a tragic accident. It was a turning point, a moment that exposed the inherent flaws in the marine park industry and sparked a movement for change. And though Tamarie herself may have disappeared from the public eye, her story continues to resonate, a testament to the enduring power of truth and the unwavering fight for justice.